Hi everyone and welcome to this Q&A session. Today we're joined by Samantha from Empower Development to talk about studies and career development. We're really excited to talk to Sam and we know that you'll all find this so valuable. Please stay tuned to the end to hear about our exclusive discount code that we have for our CII members. Without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Sam to introduce herself and Empower Development.
Excellent, thanks Sophie. So I'm Sam Ridgewell and I set up Empower Development just over 4 years ago now, and we specialise in training people exclusively in insurance through things to do with anything that's going to help you essentially get promoted. So whether that's soft skills, career conversations, and I think what we're best known for certainly at the moment is CII support as well, and just modernising the support that's available for people in the industry with sort of technology that's available for us, and also the way that we like to receive information nowadays and our shorter attention spans that we have, and adapting to those things as well.
Wonderful. And what advice would you give to students who are beginning their CII studies?
So right at the beginning, when you're doing your CII, I think it can be quite hard to just kind of carve out your route and know what you've got ahead of you. So it's really worth just spending a bit of time finding people who have been there, not too far in the past, because the CII does change some of its modules and routes over time. So you want to find some students who've done it fairly recently and ask them what they liked, what they didn't like, and what advice they have. So you can essentially just start off by mapping out what modules you're going to do, how long you kind of want to set yourself those targets to do it over, and also, really importantly, checking if you can get any exemptions, because it's always a bit of a shame if you find that out too late. So just like if you've got any kind of degree that's anything to do with business, economics or law, or any other professional qualifications, there's a good chance you're going to get some. So you want to fill that form in right at the beginning, because it can really fast track your process with it. But I think one of the hardest things is trying to work out that journey. And CII's sort of qualifications framework is complex, and that it's got a lot of freedom, a lot of choice, but with choice comes confusion. So just knowing what modules are going to work for you and which combinations will get you the credits and that kind of thing is really key as well. And it's hard to work that out on your own, and you know, people sit there looking at the website trying to work that out on their own and feel like they're missing something. Then just, you know, you're with the majority, so go out and ask some questions from people.
Definitely, no, that sounds really good. So when obviously you start your study, at the start of your journey, I think sometimes it's a little bit easier with your studies because you don't have as many responsibilities at work. So as you kind of go through your career, how do you think that you would advise to kind of balance the studies and the work aspect of your life, making sure that you get all of those done?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Just kind of emphasize your point there as well. Anyone that's listening to this that's debating if they want to do it. As soon as you're thinking about it, get it done. It will only get harder the older you get, because you know, when you're young, you're not too long out of education. You've learned how to study on your own, and you're not sort of disfamiliar with coursework and that kind of thing. But if you've left it sort of several years and then you try and get back into it, it's harder anyway. So that's going to be a disadvantage. But your job, by nature, the more senior you get, the more responsibilities you get, the more business trips you might have, the more evenings out you're going to have, and then outside of work, there's a good chance that you're going to have other commitments, and whether those commitments are just simply you're getting paid more now and you're going on more holidays and you're going away at the weekends and you don't want to miss out on things, or that you've got children now, then it will become more challenging. So the sooner you think about it, the better. But when you're trying to balance, when you are trying to find that time frame, then I think there's a few things that are really helpful. Setting yourself deadlines and targets and telling people them, because if we're saying them out loud, we'll be more accountable than if you tell yourself. You know, we all write things in our to-do list and then don't do them and put them off to the next day, and nobody knows, and we don't mind because no one's noticing it. But if you tell people, I'm going to do that and I'm going to do that by the end of April, then you're going to feel a lot more obliged to put the work in to do it. You still might not, but you're going to have a much better chance of doing it through that accountability. But also just find a way of doing the revision around your life. You know, the idea that you have to open up your book and sit down for an hour uninterrupted and just work through the book to revise is, you know, it's the old approach. You know, that isn't the way we need to do it now. So, for example, what we see with a lot of our students, when we first built our courses, and they're all online for anyone that hasn't discovered them yet, they're all videos, but people were asking, we have a feedback form, we always ask, what else can we do? And people were asking for podcasts. So we have audio only versions. So, if you do find that you have half an hour in the morning that you go out for a run, or what I tend to do is I'm listening to Peppa Pig in the background with one earphone in and listening to a podcast there, then the joy of audio only means you can just have one headphone in and you can just absorb information, not with complete focus, but it is going to feed in. And if you're kind of finding ways to adapt it into your life without sort of carving out set time, then it will just integrate it into what you're doing anyway. Having said that, you do need some time to focus and sit down and concentrate, but the whole journey doesn't have to be like that.
No, you raised very fair points there, and it sort of naturally flows into your life and not make it so heavy, isn't it? Are there any other interesting and fun ways that we can include studying within our lives, or any tips that you've learned in particular?
So one key thing I think is to have people with you on the journey. So just the nature of our makeup means that we like that sort of social interaction and knowing that other people are in the same boat as us. And particularly since we've been in the remote world, most people enroll on their module on their own. You're not walking around the office and seeing the books everywhere and starting a conversation with someone on the train because you can see they're doing the same module. Those days are kind of gone, and I hope to some degree they come back, but they're never going to be completely back. So you get your book in the post, you open it up, and you kind of feel like you're on your own. When I studied, there was a group of us. There was about sort of 10 to 15 of us in the company that were going through same modules, same pace. And that really helped me motivate myself, because I had a bit of like healthy competition, people to keep up with, but also I wasn't kind of missing out by spending the lunchtime revising, because I was with my friends in the office revising. So that kind of social element, to build that in, will make it more enjoyable. So there's a few ways that you can do that. Certainly, finding people within the institute who are also studying, attending any sessions that other people are on, but don't just attend and sit quietly. Like, jot down a couple of names and get in touch with people on LinkedIn after. We also have a Facebook group. So we have a CII study group on Facebook. It's going quite fast. We're on about 320 members at the time of recording this. So hopefully even by the time people listen to it, it'll be more than that. But the idea there is, we're there to answer people's questions and we'll share our tips on it, but that's not really the space for us. It's the space for the students to talk to each other. So if you're on there and you're saying, so we had someone called Rachel at the weekend who was asking for some last minute tips about insurance law. And then she came on and told everyone that she passed insurance law, and then everyone's in the comments congratulating her that she's passed. And these are people she doesn't know, but they're helping her and getting that kind of satisfaction in your journey. Sometimes you don't get that when you pass. It does depend on your team and the people around you as to how much they're aware to some degree, but also encouraging you to do your CII. Sometimes you might pass your module and think, yay, and you look around and you're like, who do I tell? And then there's other teams that are brilliant and they'll take you out for lunch and they'll celebrate with you, but that's not everyone's reality. So I think you have to have somewhere to celebrate those wins along the way, to feel like you are ticking them off and get that kind of motivation with it as well. The other thing is just to try and relate it to your job as much as you can, and that doesn't necessarily mean what you're doing behind the desk. Now, I worked in HR when I was doing my ACII, so a lot of what I didn't sit with CII, but if I was in a job interview and someone was talking to me about delegated authority or binders and so on, all of a sudden I understood a bit more what they were talking about, and then when I went back to the book I could relate it to that person and make it kind of feel connected to what I'm doing as much as possible. So I think use it as an opportunity to have conversations with people in the office, just get curious about what they do in their jobs and bring the book to life in terms of your life, like connect it with what you are personally doing.
Yeah, definitely. Those sound like some really good tips, and I'm definitely going to take some of those on board, especially like you say, kind of getting a group together. I think that's a really good idea to keep motivation up, and yeah, no, really good ideas there. So moving on, we were interested to see about 3 things that you're passionate about. So that can kind of be anything, but I know obviously from seeing your posts on LinkedIn, there's a lot of things within the industry that you are really passionate about. So we'd love to hear about some of those.
Cool. So have you seen my TikTok?
Yes, I had.
Okay. That's probably my biggest passion at the minute. So I think it's a kind of, you very rarely find anyone that works in insurance that doesn't have a passion for telling young people about what a brilliant industry we work in, and doesn't also have a frustration of how hard it is to convince people of that, and also usually a story of how they fell into insurance. And I think for me, that was certainly the case. My family didn't have A-levels, let alone degrees. No one was kind of pointing me towards a corporate job, and I completely fell into it. And to be honest, I had no idea that I could do it. And then once I was in it, it was not only, wow, this is interesting, but also kind of a bit of a surprise as to the capability I had in it. And I think there's supposed to be so many people out there that just don't get that direction and don't know where to go and don't fall into it. So I think as an industry, we're really good at having events for people once they find out they're interested. So we have lots of insight days. We have free student membership for the CII, and Step Forward in the CII does a lot of initiatives around schools and universities all year long. The issue I always find is that we kind of assume they're going to find those initiatives, but the reality is they don't think we're interested enough to even come to the insight day. So my focus really, TikTok was a bit of an accident. I'd for years been trying to do this. I used to work with Discover Risk, and there was a group of us that turned Discover Risk, the board game that we do in schools, into an app to make it kind of more accessible. It was a big part of what I was interested in. And I was on TikTok one day, and I just did a TikTok basically saying how I'd select 6 grads out of 800 applications in my previous role, and it got 500,000 views. And I'd gone from like 200 views to 500,000, so it was a little bit of a long night where I couldn't sleep. Keeping an eye on the comments, but it was brilliant. Like all of a sudden, all these graduates were following me, and they were following me for advice on CVs and advice on cover letters because they want that. So my page became very much about giving that advice and answering people's questions and doing live sessions where I'd look at their CVs or whatever people are asking for, and then that picked up the following. And then now I have a captive audience of young people looking for jobs. I can just kind of point them towards insurance every now and again. And the whole nature of TikTok is that you can't really do it by, presenting it. That's not fun. So you have to make it, on trend or whatever the kind of content is that's going to get viewed in that minute. And sometimes it works and sometimes it flops, but that's half the fun. So I love that. And there must be about a dozen people working in insurance that have come from my TikTok. So they never knew about insurance. Then they found me on TikTok, and then they came on like our Into Insurance course, and then I point people towards jobs that are available, and then they come in and they work, and that I love that because we've seen it go full circle, which is brilliant, and it feels like it's worth it, because sometimes I'd go to a career event and you wouldn't feel like you get the enthusiasm you want there, but on TikTok it is worth it.
Yeah, because most of the time you hear, oh, I fell into insurance, and it's like, oh, it'd be nice if someone actually chose it instead of fell into it.
Yeah. Did you fall into it?
No, I didn't fall into it, which is nice. But do you have any particular tips for young professionals in regards to their professional development?
So top tips for professional development. My number one tip is always to get out of your comfort zone as much as you can. So the whole idea of development is to stretch yourself. And if you are doing things you're comfortable with, you're not stretching yourself. So you want to be doing things that make you a bit nervous. But the reality of things making you a bit nervous means that you're going to look for excuses often to say no. Okay, so it might be like the opportunity to do a presentation in a team meeting, or have a conversation with your manager about an opportunity that they might say no to, or that you're going to connect with a client that you've never sort of had the opportunity to speak to before, and you're going to take on a larger account, whatever it might be that you haven't done before. As much as possible, you want to encourage that discomfort so it becomes a habit to do things that scare you a bit. So in fact, with my kids, I always say to them, whenever they say something scary, I always say scary is fun. So, like, scary should be fun. We shouldn't be like, oh, it's scary, I won't do it. It's scary is a good thing. Let's try and do that. So always look for those opportunities, number one. Secondly, a really common mistake, I think, is to underestimate the importance of networking. Networking, is twofold often. So one piece is networking in your job. So through the nature of your line of business or the organisation, the department you're working in, you will have connections that you want to have good relationships with. And I think often people accept and acknowledge that as part of the role to some degree. But then there's networking for your career, as I describe it, in the sense that it's not necessarily going to help your job today, but it might make an introduction for somebody where you develop a friendship, or where you have somebody who you can go to for brilliant advice 3 years down the line from now, or when you're working and starting a new job in 10 years, you already know half a dozen people in that department because you've met them before at different events. And I think that kind of long-sighted intention around it, where it's not deliberate connections for any kind of outcome. Steve Jobs used to say you can only connect the dots when you look back. And I think often we look at networking and think, right, who is worth my time? Like, where am I going to get value? And I think it's best to look at it as though, how can I network effectively as broadly as I can and enjoy it, like in a way that I enjoy it, because there are so many different ways to network. And then if you're enjoying that, then you're naturally going to form those relationships as well. And the earlier in your career you start doing that, the better, because it's inevitable, it will come later. But those relationships you've had from the beginning of your career, where there was nothing in it for anyone, would always be more authentic than the relationships when you turn up with a business card looking to sell something 15 years down the line. So do that as early as you can. And then, I mean, for number 3, I think having people that you can go to who are a good impact on you is probably where I'm stalling, because I'm like, limit it to 3. I'm going to pick this one. So number 3 would be, essentially, the research shows us we are as good as the 6 people we spend most of our time with. So if you think of this as teenagers at school, parents will look at those teenagers and say, I don't want you hanging out with them. Right? And that will be because they can see that maybe they don't take their homework so seriously, or maybe they've got a little bit more of an attitude towards things that they don't want to rub off on you, right? And this is absolutely the case for us at whatever age we're at. If you are in a workplace, let's take CII, where you are surrounded by a group of people who really take their CII seriously, who enjoy it, don't moan about it, and actually encourage you to do well at it, you will find that journey much easier. If you are surrounded by people who tell you it's a waste of time, don't bother, I didn't need it, like, that's going to make you put less effort into it. It's going to rub off in that way. And in the same mindset, if you have a challenging day at work, and you will have challenges, and you go to people, you want those people that you go to be people who say, okay, so what are we going to do about this? Let's come up with some actions. You're going to be fine. We're going to get there. It's going to be like a little bit of a challenge, maybe a couple of awkward conversations, but we'll get through it. And this is what we're going to do about it. So people who are going to make you better. So as you look around your peers and the people you meet, if you see anyone and you think they are inspirational or aspirational, then connect with them and spend more time with people like that, because you want to be the average of the people you're spending that time with.
No, definitely. Yeah, those are some really good points. And I really like that kind of quote. Like you said, I've heard that before about the 6 people, and I do think that's really important, especially with the year, I guess, coming out of COVID. Professional development and networking is going to be key more than ever. So definitely advise everybody to take opportunities where they can and really get involved. So moving on from that, we'd love to know at Empower, do you have any face-to-face events, obviously now that COVID is kind of going back to normal? And also, do you have any plans to release any new content for any CIO modules?
Yeah, so let's take the face-to-face piece first. Face-to-face is starting to come back. What I'm seeing is, at the moment, the majority of the time, training is staying virtual, and a lot of that I think is because of this trend that people don't want to sit in the training room for a day anymore. They want an hour, and it makes more sense for that to be virtual. So we're seeing still most of it sitting virtually. But we ourselves host networking events for people who are brand new into the market to meet each other and so on. And we've got those, we did face-to-face one of those in December. We've got another one of those coming up in April. So we're starting to see it come back, but I don't think we're never going to have it all back. It's going to be, I think, probably slightly more towards the virtual side than the face-to-face side. Having said that, for me, like, I want to be seeing people at least twice a week in London and going around different offices and sort of having that connection, because I can see, for me, the energy I get from it when I'm going in is just, it's so much more than sitting at home. But also the instant reward of a conversation is less. Like, absolutely, if I spend all day working, I will get through a to-do list and I'll get through my emails much more effectively. But the impact I can have with them is limited. Whereas if I'm out seeing people, when you sort of catch people that you weren't expecting to see, and there's a little comment there and that you hadn't expected, and you can find opportunities you didn't know were there. So I'm certainly seeing it worthwhile being back in. And people who are, something I worry about actually is people not going back in enough. I mean, the definition of enough is your choice, but certainly don't underestimate the impact of going in. It is absolutely going to help your career to go in enough that people see you, and when you're in, that you get enough exposure, because familiarity is really important for building relationships, and it's very hard to feel familiar to people if you're not seeing them. So yeah, so a fair bit with face-to-face. In terms of modules, the way we do it, we essentially go through demand to launch our modules. So we first launched, we first started this project 2 years ago. And essentially, so for anyone that hasn't used the tool, we take the book and then we turn it into bite-sized videos. Some of them will be cartoons, some of them are conversations between me and Grace and all the ridiculous ways that we remember the content, PowerPoints, sort of summaries, practice questions, but everything's like bite-sized. You can watch it and do it as many times as you want. And when we started this, we thought, we did not know how long it was going to take us, and we didn't know, you know, how well received it was going to be, because at that point people were still very used to face-to-face. So we started it just for MA5 and LM1 and LM2 and M92, being that those were some of the most popular modules. And of course it went really well, people were really receptive to it, and then we were like chasing ourselves to get through all of these other modules, and we haven't stopped. So we're currently up to about 40 modules. Most recently, we've launched 6 international modules, including 3 in Arabic.
Wow.
I'm not the voiceover, and it's just how it goes with that. We've got IF5 just come out, and M97 is coming next. 995 will be out this week, in fact. So next on our list is I11 and 996. And essentially what we've done is we've gone through the ones that are most popular. And when people ask us for modules, if we get lots of people asking, we will do them. So in all honesty, when it comes to modules like the marine module, like only a handful of people sit that exam a year. So it's probably not worth us spending a month making a course for it. Yeah. The amount of time it goes into them is huge. But for example, I11, there's a reasonable amount of people that do sit that one, albeit less than IF4 and IF3 and IF8. So we kind of prioritise in that way. But the other thing that we do is once the module's launched, it's not done. So annually we do updates. So we go through and check what the CII updates are and see how that impacts what we have in there. And also for the advanced diploma ones, a big part of what we do in that is interview the industry. So as things change in the industry, we are interviewing new people, we're adding new content in there as well. So we will constantly be adding and developing. And equally, like I say, every course has a form for ideas. So students come back to us and say, can we have this? If it's something we can easily do, we absolutely do it. And if it's something that might be difficult, but lots of people ask for it, we'll still do it. So we don't really even know how far it's going to go. But it's not something we have any vision of ever saying, right, job done. It's going to be a continuous process.
Yeah, and that's what the industry is like as well. We're all the time gaining new knowledge. Everything's changing, so it's good to have the module information all up to date. And thank you for all of your knowledge today and your time. What's the best way for the students to get in touch with yourself? Would it be via your website or LinkedIn or Instagram?
Yeah, it's quite a few ways. If it's to send me a message, LinkedIn's best for that. If it's to just keep up to date with what we've got going on, Instagram's best for that. Instagram, we also run giveaways, as you guys know. Every week we do a giveaway, so that's worth following just to keep up to date with those. But what we're trying to do a lot more content of is lives as well. So, you know, live sessions, answering people's questions, whether to do with CI or career questions. So if you follow us on there, you'll see more and more of us coming through there as well. And if it's questions to do with CII specifically, the Facebook group's probably best, because we can answer, but sometimes you don't necessarily want a right answer. You want people's opinions, and you'll get that from the other students in there too. So hopefully I'm easy to find. We do have a live chat on the website as well. So if you've just got questions to do with what we do, then there's someone there 9 to 5. But any way that fits with your means will be around.
Wonderful, thank you.
Great, and we also had a discount code, didn't we? So sorry, do you remember the discount code for what? Sorry, I think it was it CII studies?
Was it CII studies, or was it Institute CII? I think that then I.
Sorry, that's me not being
We'll put
prepared.
it in the notes.
Yes, we'll add it in the notes.
We'll add it in the notes.
Yeah. So we've got 10% off for the first 20 people that redeem on that coupon code. I think I started off with Institute CII and thought, oh, that's easy to spell wrong. So I might have changed it to CII studies, but I honestly can't remember. So we'll have to look and put it in the notes.
Yeah, no, definitely, that's great. Thank you.
All right.
Cool. Thanks everybody, and thanks for watching, and thanks Samantha for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.